Good evening and welcome to APTN National News. I'm Savannah Kelly. On Wednesday, the Transport Safety Board of Canada released their report into the investigation of a Migma boat that capsized in 2021. It was called the Tie-Hawk. 2 people perished, a crew member and the master of the Tie-Hawk. The brother of the master who drowned says the Migma have no say in the fishing industry. Angel Moore reports.
Migma fisherman Craig Sock, known as Jumbo, and 39-year-old Seth Monahan did not survive the capsizing of the Tie-Hawk vessel off the west coast of Cape Breton on April 3, 2021. Earlier this week, the Transportation Safety Board released a report on the tragedy. After reading it and the resulting recommendations, Derek Sock, Jumbo's brother, says there is no reference to Migma knowledge.
We've been doing this for millennia, I guess, Our ancestors, they were expert fishermen, and they should be listening to the grassroots people more and more, because that's where you get all the vital information of what is really needed here.
Sock says the season opened too early and the Department of Fisheries and Oceans ignored the Mi'kmaq community of Elsipogtok's concerns.
We both thought the season was early because it's usually in May, and then it started in April, which is still snowing then, and there's a lot more wind. So it's kind of it's dangerous.
Sock says the safety board's recommendations are a start, but would like to see more input from the Migma.
We're not involved. We should be side by side, and I think that should be in every government level, hand in hand, side by side. And that would make it so much easier for us as, fishermen.
APTN News asked the safety board if the Migma were consulted during the investigation. Carrie Allen, regional senior investigator of the safety board, had this to say.
For Department of Fisheries and Oceans to ensure that their policies, procedures, and practices include a comprehensive identification of hazards. As to why the director of fisheries from Elsipogtok wasn't adhered to or listened to, that would be a question for Department of Fisheries and Oceans.
Angel Moore, APTN National News, Jabuktuk, also known as Halifax.
A young man in Arviat, Nunavut was found dead after leaving home Wednesday morning as the region was being hit by severe weather. John Mukyungnik Alakut was later discovered just outside the community. According to RCMP, the matter remains under investigation. The news comes as most of the Kavalak region still contends with power outages caused by the same severe weather. The communities of Baker Lake, Sanikiluak, Nauyat, Arviat, Rankin Inlet, and Whale Cove have all suffered town-wide power outages. Arviat in particular has seen some of the worst of it, with some residents still not receiving power after 3 days. As of Friday afternoon, crews were still working to restore power to homes in Arviat, Whale Cove, Baker Lake, and Nauyat. A crowd rallied in front of Whitehorse City Hall today as it prepares to reopen taxi bylaw discussions. Women's advocacy groups and supporters want the recommendations from a 2022 taxi safety report to be put into action. That report said Indigenous women are 3 times more likely to experience harassment when taking a taxi in Whitehorse compared to non-Indigenous women. But very few recommendations from the report have been implemented. They would like to see cameras in cabs whose data goes directly to the city and more education on gender-based violence for drivers and taxi companies.
We're seeing more and more public commitments and plans and strategies to do things about it. And I think one of the things that's really important to know is the Women's Coalition and the partners in town, we have solutions. The answers are there for many of these things, and it just needs to be implemented. It takes some leadership and responsibility to those things.
The Trudeau government is receiving some negative feedback for underfunding First Nations priorities in its fall economic statement released earlier this week. In a press release, the Assembly of First Nations said that it is disappointed that the federal government failed to provide sustained funding for First Nations emergency management, language revitalization, education, and health. The NDP also says the statement misses the mark in addressing the massive First Nations infrastructure gap.
There is a $350 billion gap, infrastructure gap. Indigenous peoples are being forced to continue to live in poverty because of the lack of investments being given to support Indigenous peoples to lift them out of poverty. And these important infrastructure gaps need to be filled.
A couple living at a homeless encampment in Cornwall are still mourning the death of a loved one, but luckily they've had help from an Akwesasne-based community organization to heal. Amelia Fournier has more.
At this homeless encampment in Cornwall, Ontario, one couple is still grieving the death of Diane Hebert. She passed away at the camp on November 4th after the Cornwall Community Hospital discharged her.
They discharged her of the hospital because she didn't have like a big problem. She just need oxygen, and so they drop her here, and she called the place for the oxygen, and because she don't have her address, they didn't give her oxygen, but she need oxygen 24/24, so she passed away.
Diane Hebert's daughter, Kim Legault, says her mother had COPD, a lung condition that may require 24-hour oxygen, but she didn't have a fixed address to have the oxygen delivered. Legault says that contributed to her mother's death. Cornwall Community Hospital declined an interview request when asked about Diane's case, and a coroner's investigation into Diane's death is underway. Medical issues are just one of the many hazards of camp life. Legault and her partner Keith Seyu say they are holding out for more permanent living conditions, away from people detoxing at temporary shelters like Parisian Manor in Cornwall. They found an apartment to rent, but without the help of Diane's income assistance, they're no longer able to afford the initial deposit.
J'ai un appartement, l'électricité est à mon nom, toutes les utilities sont à mon nom. But on n'est pas capable d'avoir the first and the last rent. And because before we were 3 of us, and now we only 2 of us.
Tina Point, a Mohawk woman from neighboring Akwesasne, brought Kim and Keith to the camp in August. She's been creating a safer community in this camp for people on the streets of Cornwall and Akwesasne, and helping the couple grieve.
Everything is all volunteer work, and I'm just doing what my grandparents taught me to do. And that's just, helping our people with their healing journeys and getting them to the next space.
Point runs the Akwesasne-based volunteer organization Unity Street Help Association, which has been helping homeless people access detox, housing, and traditional healing, working with the Akwesasne Band Council.
Some of them drug addicts are future counselors in our community. 2 of them I was working are fluent Mohawk. You might see them around, but they're fluent Mohawk. They know their ceremonies. When I came back, they were all hooked on fentanyl. Now they're going to detox.
These healing practices are also available to non-Indigenous people like Keith and Kim.
I'm trying to find my way in life, and Tina's really trying to help us with that. The sacred fire, I learned so much more, and I look at fire differently now. The elder that's here that helps out, he's a really great guy, and I learn more and more every day from him.
While skyrocketing housing prices and income assistance are regulated by the province, Cornwall's Mayor Justin Towndale said that emergency funding is available through United Way for those struggling to pay a rent deposit, and those who wish to stay at the camp won't be evicted.
We have no intention at this time to forcibly remove everyone. There is still room at Parisian Manor for those that are interested. We are trying to encourage them, but we're not in a position, or nor would we look to forcibly move anybody, right? We want people to be comfortable to make that decision to move in there on their own.
Tina Point plans on continuing her work until everyone is comfortably housed.
I'm just taking it day by day because people keep coming in, and the government can't deny me to do land-based healing with my people.
Amelia Fournier, APTN National News, Cornwall, Ontario.
We want to hear what you think about the hazards of camp life. Here's how to continue the conversation. If you have a story you want to share, send us an email to news@aptn.ca. To read and watch our stories, go to aptnnews.ca. You can also find us online on your favorite social media sites, including TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, and X, previously known as Twitter. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. We have to take a short break, but coming up, a new opera explores the role of women in the life of Louis Riel.
I wanted to look at how Riel not only loves the land, but in particular I wanted to talk about a love affair at the center of the story, which very few people know of.
She is the legend of Indigenous documentary filmmakers, and now the National Film Board of Canada has unveiled a new 12-disc DVD box set of acclaimed Abenaki filmmaker Alanis Obomsawin's work. It happened at an event earlier this week, which included 4 world premieres. Maricela Amador has more.
The legend that inspired a mural. the gallery artist, the musician. But really, what Alanis Obomsawin is known for is her illustrious career as a documentary filmmaker.
I am here to let the world know, especially the government of Canada, that we demand a proper education.
Now, her remarkable legacy is being celebrated with the release of a DVD box set featuring 28 new and classic films.
Ce que ça veut dire pour moi, c'est la parole, c'est la voix de nos peuples qui vont être entendus. C'est historiquement ce qui s'est passé dans notre pays.
Obomsawin expressed a sense of relief at finally presenting the set. Spending the last 3 years working on the project with the National Film Board, or NFB. The box set was curated by the acclaimed filmmaker herself. It includes 7 never-before-seen bonuses and the premieres of 4 short films.
You know what? You are the reason why we do all this, right?
Suzanne Guevremont, the president of NFB, said that it was a passion project for the agency.
C'est un projet extraordinaire d'héritage, en fait, de toute l'histoire que Alanis a avec nous depuis les 50 dernières années, sinon plus. C'est vraiment l'opportunité pour nous de mettre en valeur tout le talent et tout le travail qu'elle a fait, l'impact qu'elle a eu sur toutes les communautés.
Obomsawin has inspired generations of Indigenous creators and filmmakers. She has received numerous awards and honors for her work in social activism. And don't expect the 91-year-old filmmaker to slow down now. She said that she is currently working on other projects that she is excited about.
Tant que j'ai la santé, je vais travailler. J'aime ce que je fais. Et avec toutes les années qui ont passé, je suis rendue à 65 films de finis. Ça fait depuis 1967 que je suis ici. Alors j'ai vécu toutes sortes d'injustices, toutes sortes d'affaires, tout ce que vous voulez. Mais aujourd'hui, je vois les résultats et je vois les possibilités.
The films are available in English and in French, with 4 films offering Cree version options. The DVD box set can be purchased through the NFB website. Maricela Amador, APTN National News, Montreal.
An Indigenous-led opera takes the stage in Winnipeg. It tells the story of Métis leader Louis Riel while highlighting the importance of Indigenous women. The sold-out show is spoken and sung in 2 Indigenous languages. APTN's Tamara Pimentel has more.
Liqueur Riel's Heart of the North is a celebration of Louis Riel, Métis women and culture. It's the first full-scale Indigenous-led opera and explores a chapter in Riel's life that is often not told.
Often it's a very political narrative and it's very masculinist. And I thought, well, no, I wanted to look at Riel as a human being.
Suzanne Steele is the Métis librettist who wrote Liqueur in partnership with Manitoba Opera.
I wanted to look at how Riel not only loves the land, but in particular I wanted to talk about a love affair at the center of the story, which very few people know of.
Louis Riel was a Métis leader and a founder of the province of Manitoba. He led 2 resistance movements against the Canadian government and was hanged for treason in 1885. This week he was officially named first Premier of Manitoba. Liqueur shows the impact Riel had on future generations, and it's spoken and sung in Michif and Anishinaabe-Moan, along with French and English.
This is really an Indigenous approach to telling opera. We have a 21st century student who's kind of stressing about identity, and she gets a mystical visit by her mamère, her grandmother, who is a trapper and shooter, and just someone who reminds the young girl about who she is, and she tells stories of the mamère tells stories of the buffalo hunt in 1870 and about Riel, and especially about the women.
Steele's daughter Ellis Spikeen was alongside her mother through the years of research it took for this production to happen.
In 2017, we took a 10,000 kilometer road trip through the heartland of Métis country, and we spent time at St. Peter's in Montana, looking at the ruins of the school where Riel taught. We worked in the archives together. For me, though, as a Métis woman, it's really exciting to see our story being told.
Tamara Pimentel, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Coming up after the break, we speak to Investigates reporter Chris Reed about his latest episode. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. Sarah Connors shared this photo with us. It's a picture of Wilson. He's named after the volleyball from the Tom Hanks movie, Castaway. Although this Wilson will never leave Sarah floating in the water. And thank goodness for that. Thanks for sharing, Sarah. Send your pictures to share@aptn.ca to be our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting off on the east coast, -3 in Halifax with snow there, -5 in Fredericton. -4 in Nain and snowy and -6 in Kuujjuaq. Saguenay, -8, sunshine there, Val-d'Or, 0 degrees. Sault Ste. Marie, sunshine, 1 degree, Toronto, +3. Thunder Bay, 0 degrees and sunshine there, Big Trout Lake, -1. Churchill, snowy and -8 there, Norway House, -2. Gimli, -2, sunny there, Barons River, 0 degrees. Regina, snowy and +1, North Battleford, +1 as well. Stony Rapids, -18 and snowy there, La Ronge, -2. Fort Chip, snowy and -8, Fort McMurray, -2. Red Deer, snowy and 3 degrees, Calgary, sunshine, 6. Penticton, 4 degrees and sunny there, Canal, -1. Fort Nelson, snowy, -4 there, Sandspit, 9 degrees. Mayo, -11, sunshine there, Rock River, -8. Wrigley, sunshine, -11, Wati, -15. Paulituck, -15, sunshine there, snowy and -13 in Colville Lake. Baker Lake, sunshine, -15, Chesterfield, -10. Iqaluit, snowy there, -9, Igloolik, -23. APTN Investigates returns tonight with an all-new episode. There's a new Canada Water Act in the works, and the Trudeau government says Indigenous rights will be respected. Investigative journalist Christopher Reid takes a look at what that might mean, especially for communities where clean water has been something they've had to fight for. With more on the story, we're joined now by Christopher Reid. Thanks for joining us, Christopher. So your episode Liquid Law looks at a new version of the Canada Water Act the Trudeau government is working on. What do we know so far about what the plan is for the new act?
Well, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau came to Winnipeg's Forks National Historic Site in the spring to announce they're working on the new legislation, and he said there will be a focus on involving Indigenous people more in decisions around protecting fresh water. He also announced a new water agency, which will be based in Winnipeg, and all of this is to be up and running by the spring of 2024. The feds, to be honest, aren't really saying a lot about what their new law will say, but they're telling us they will be consulting with Indigenous and Inuit organizations and people. They also recommitted themselves to ending drinking water issues like the boil water advisories on reserves that we've heard so much about so often. And we wanted to put kind of a spotlight on this and find out what the new Canada Water Act and agency ought to do if it is to be successful in bolstering Indigenous water rights.
So how should they make the new Canada Water Act work better for First Peoples?
Well, Aimee Craft is an associate professor at the University of Ottawa, and she runs a federally funded group called Decolonizing Water. She co-runs it, and she and other people we spoke with emphasized the importance of having Indigenous people at the table making decisions. And she says the current legislation sees water as a resource to be profited from and protected, but she's interested in the idea of shifting that paradigm so that Canadians see water more like Indigenous people do. And we talked about a document produced by the Treaty 3 Grand Council, the NIBI Declaration. And in the NIBI Declaration's way of thinking, water is life, it's a living entity with agency and rights of its own.
And you went up to Split Lake. What did you see?
Well, we saw how Manitoba Hydro's flow manipulations have affected the ecosystem and the culture of the people in Tataskwiak Cree Nation. So a Manitoba Hydro project, this goes quite far back, but a project that they did a long time ago called the Churchill River Diversion sends a bunch of extra water through the Nelson River, which includes Split Lake, and they do this to generate power in hydroelectric dams along the Nelson. It's very impressive engineering that serves us well in the south, but up there it's killing fish and creating all kinds of erosion issues, which churns up sediment and puts dead trees out in the lake. So they used to get their drinking water out of Split Lake, but now they're drinking bottled water and waiting for the federal government to build them a new pipeline from nearby Ashen Lake. And this is after the community beat the feds in a class action suit about their drinking water. So this is a place where there are signs up about E. coli in the lake and nobody swims in it any longer. So it's a First Nations community that has had the kinds of troubles the federal government might want to set their sights on, and they might want to aim their legislation at it.
Well, Christopher, we'll have to leave it there, but thanks for your time today. Looking forward to seeing more on this story.
My pleasure. Thank you.
You can catch APTN Investigates Liquid Law a few minutes from now, immediately following APTN National News. And that's all the time we have for your Friday news. But for news anytime, visit our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Savannah Kelly, and from all of us here, Marcy, Miigwech, and thank you for joining us. Take care. Have a great weekend.